It's midnight at the movies with RickRamos and Chavez. It's midnight again, and the sun has set on Hollywood stars. We're in a crumbling mansion now, on the B side of Sunset Boulevard, in another haunted film. Haunted by the ghosts of old Hollywood. It's old Hollywood Gothic. We're haunted by Crawford and Davis, by their own ghosts and their own stories, by the characters that they play, by their imaginary but real enough childhoods. And when we watch stacks of hauntings. And when I watch, I see immortal Hollywood starlets. I see dead starlets. I see the dark side of Hollywood. I see Virginia Rapp, suicides, murders, starlets gone crazy. I see the final girl in so many films, this time doomed to outlive her own horror story, her own success story, and creep into the horror that Hollywood makes us imagine is the horror of female old age. That's what I see. Whatever happened to Baby Jane is, in a derogatory way, referred to as hag horror. Hag horror. I see it not only as a horror story in and of itself, but also as the horror of the shallowness of Hollywood. But in that shallowness, how deep it can go in the sense of being able to tell a story that reveals a lot about itself. What do you see, Rick?
I see a lot of that. But most, what I see is, I think there's something very sad about the film in both the narrative that is being presented on screen, but also the struggle between these two women, Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, behind the scenes and the feud that would um, carry on for years. And also our delight in watching these two women go at it and knowing that there was so much paranoia, hatred, jealousy, and just flat out hatred between the two. Saying hatred twice, I couldn't think of anything better because hatred covers pretty much all of the bases. I had only seen this film one other time before. And when we started thinking about this couple of months of midnight movies, cult films, there was definitely the sense of we were gonna dig into camp, cult, the midnight movie scene, the culture that surrounds this kind of movie, watching this movie, this kind of romantic movie, um, excitement that I grew up with, that I think you grew up with, and that I think is sadly going away and will never be known again. The fact of the matter is that a film like this would be great to watch in an audience of fans and lovers of both Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. But there is something about it that makes me feel kind of the old very obvious and very boring idea of crabs in a bucket pulling each other down, can't get ahead, and then you throw into the whole thing of even strong women can't strong women can't support each other. The fact of the matter is that what makes this movie exciting, what makes it watchable, infinitely watchable, is that it is so true to the paranoia and the struggle to hold on to whatever it is that we believe defines us. It's just that on the screen, it's amplified, it's exaggerated, and you can't help but watch Bette Davis's life and Joan Crawford's life bleed into the characters of these two women, these two sisters, these Jane Hudson, baby Jane Hudson, and her sister Blanche. But the film is able to walk a tightrope of both not necessarily horrific horror in the sense of a Psycho or a Chainsaw Massacre or a Halloween, but is the brutality of people for one another. I gotta say, both of them are wonderful in this film. I think Bette Davis gets the lion's share of the accolades because of the performance being so fucking out there and the makeup. I don't know if there was an actor of her generation or before or even after that embraced looking bad on screen. I mean, she looks horrible in this movie. And it's beautiful. I watched it again last night. I was like, "Oh my god!" And you know, I've talked to you a little bit about black and white versus color, and I've said, and I stand by it, even though you give very good examples of problems with what I view as there is no film that can't be made better by being in black and white. You had very good examples to dismiss what I said, but like many things, you kind
Did
of
we
just
ever do,
we will do that episode at some point.
did we talk about this at all on the mic?
No, we've never talked about this on the mic. I don't think. We've talked about how much I love black and white. We've talked about how beautiful we've talked about how beautiful black and white photographs, especially smoke, how beautiful smoke is and fog and shadows in black and white. Um, we will get into that at one point because it's an aesthetic thing, and I think it's an important discussion to have if you love movies. I think it's a discussion we've had the discussion off mic. We've never talked it thoroughly on mic. But can you imagine this movie in color? Can you imagine what that pancake white makeup that or some reasonable facsimile that Bette Davis would have had to wear in order to achieve that look? It would have made it in black and white. It's believable. In real life, to see that makeup that she had on would be laughable and almost you would have to say, "Come on, let's get." It's too much. Black and white
Yeah,
makes this an incredible. It sells it. I think it does. I think it tones certain things down and it amplifies the gothic nature of the film without it being gothic. I mean, that mansion that they not even a mansion, but that home that they live in, the
yeah,
shadows, the darkness. It wouldn't work in color. I don't think if they ever remake this movie, which they will at some point. Um, I don't I don't see it. I don't see it being able to work in the same way. I'm sure there are actors in Hollywood who hate each other enough, but I don't. I don't think they don't have the long-standing hateful relationship that Joan Crawford and Bette Davis had in order to make this a possibility. I mean, this movie was, in a way, it's kind of unfair, um, because this movie is built and it was marketed and produced on the very real and known animosity between these two actors. Robert Aldrich, the director, got the rights to the book, the 1960 book, and his plan was to have these two, and in part to sell it. It was a matter of how much hatred existed between Joan Crawford and Bette Davis.
So go
Go into that?
first. Yeah, first go about what's the premise, and then go into the backstory.
Well, I think the premise is a fucking great one. Baby Jane Hudson is an older woman, probably in her. I don't see. You know what? It's weird because I imagine these women in their 60s, but when they made this, they must have been in their late 40s, early 50s, maybe. But that would
Which
have,
is crazy.
yeah, which is very crazy. They would have been. Jane Hudson was known as Baby Jane Hudson and was a star of vaudeville in the early 20s. And, she was a cute little girl, pigtails in her dress, on stage singing songs about her daddy. And there was a sweetness to her that on stage hid an angry, very greedy, and I mean it's like anything where it's like if you, especially with a child, if a child is told that they're great all the time and they're surrounded by people telling them yes, they're going to be fucked up. We had this conversation all those years ago when we talked about Michael Jackson and Elvis. Remember that episode? Yeah, where it's there's a matter of warping a person's sensibilities by telling them how great they are, by constantly telling them how great they are, how unique they are, how special they are. And Betty Davis plays that character, plays the grown-up version of a young girl who was never told no, who was always, who was glorified in her childlike innocence. But as the years go by, she can't outgrow it. She can't evolve into something other than a nightmare version of a sweet little girl dancing with pigtails. I mean, it's really interesting because you watch this movie and you see all there are no shortage of TV and film actors who stopped being cute, but were still trying to be sold as the character that they once were. I'm thinking specifically of Gary Coleman, Dana, the whole Different Strokes cast, basically. Gary Coleman, Todd Bridges, Dana Plato. You're
Tragic. All
tragic. Yeah, you see drug addiction, um, suicide, and the slow evolution of health problems that would take all of them. They're all dead now. You would also see Amanda Bynes from Nickelodeon television shows in a early 2000s sitcom called I Like It Like That, I think, or with her and Jenny Garth, and you see her fly off the rails. You see Lindsay Lohan. There's very few cases of a Kurt Russell or a Jodie Foster that grow in the business and become even more successful than their childhood avatars would would
yeah.
lead you to believe. So this is one of those examples of somebody never growing out of it, and the sister, who you can see right from the beginning, the good sister, who has anger and a bit of jealousy and clear hatred for her sister. But I mean, if you've ever had family, you would know that brother and sister, sister and sister, brother and brother relationships are just that. There's oftentimes love, but there's also immense hatred between the two because of just family dynamics. So the story here, it's not explicit with that background, but you know it's there. Joan Crawford's Blanche becomes a movie star, becomes the face of a studio, and becomes such a star that she's able to use her power and muscle the studio into providing projects for her sister Jane. As it goes on, it is believed that Jane becomes an alcoholic, and is it explicit in the beginning that she tried to run her over, or that it was an accident?
Well, it's not explicit.
Well, in the beginning, what in the beginning, do they claim that she tried to run her? No, no, that's the thing. Jane wants to say, and it'll play out. It'll play out as you get to the end of the movie, which is great. But she wants everybody to believe that it's an accident. But the talk around town and the gossips and the next door neighbor is that she tried to kill her sister out of jealousy.
Yeah.
Drunken
Yeah.
jealousy. So now Joan Crawford's Blanche is in a wheelchair, and it's interesting what you said, the old age of movie stars, and let's be honest, that's even more pronounced with female stars. I mean, everybody
100%.
ages, and yeah. I mean, I'm not getting on a soapbox, and I'm not trying to create some platform where, women should, and it's unfair because men just get more distinguished. But these things are true. There's a certain reality that a man can age in Hollywood. They might not continue playing the lover role, the romantic lead, but they're going to still have interesting roles. I think part of the production here was the excitement of Bette Davis and Joan Crawford being able to, number one, find work as leads, even if it was a low budget film. But the comment that they would be able to make on Hollywood, because it's very much a biting and scathing look at Hollywood and how it treats women. It's obvious when you watch a movie like this, you're watching two women who've had careers in Hollywood for over 2 decades, and have, with Bette Davis, the face of, I think she was either MGM or 20th Century. No, she was Warner Brothers. She was Warner Brothers, and Joan Crawford goes back even farther into silent film. I mean, if you recall, we did an episode on Lon Chaney, Todd Browning's The Unknown, and Joan Crawford was the female lead in that film. But there's Joan Crawford was a star, not a star, but she was big in silent films, and then she would slowly move her way into the talkies. But Bette Davis would rise from the stage into the early days of 1930s films, and she would slowly become this force. And some people consider her probably the greatest female actor that cinema has ever known. I mean, that's debatable, but it's definitely a possibility that she was the greatest of her time. And
Right. Yeah.
So definitely of her time. Yeah. But you also have to take into account the changing phases of acting and how all of that evolves to what it is today. The story is that Bette Davis established herself, I believe, at Warner Brothers, and then went over to either 20th Century Fox or MGM, and she started making pictures there. She was still an A-list actress, but Joan Crawford enters the picture and is kind of somebody that's being pushed. And in the business as it is, anybody who is the star is going to be afraid of who's coming up, who's next, who's the one that's going to be biting at your heels. And the story is that that Joan Crawford, when she came to the studio, attempted to endear herself to Bette Davis. And Bette Davis was the kind. Watch some of those old interviews with Bette Davis as she's sitting there, old, sometimes after a stroke and a mastectomy, smoking a cigarette. A stroke and a mastectomy, smoking a cigarette, and not giving a shit. Just brutal and just embracing her true bitchiness. And you have to love her. I mean, she would have probably been a pain in the ass to deal with, but we can sit back and watch her from afar and just laugh our asses off at the audacity. This is this small, frail woman who, even in her old age, didn't give a fuck and would tell you so. So the understanding that Joan Crawford is sizing up to her and trying to befriend Bette Davis, she wouldn't have that. And so there was like a struggle going back and forth for the longest time. Bette Davis was the top tier. If Bette Davis didn't like a script, then they went through the obvious others. And Joan Crawford was usually pulling the scraps off of what Bette Davis didn't want. Now, Joan Crawford would do a film, I think in the late 40s, called Mildred Pierce, which is one of the great noirs. And it's a great film. It's a great film. And Joan Crawford is incredible in it. And Bette Davis had turned that film down. Joan Crawford wins an Oscar for it. So now there's a formidable struggle between the two. And God knows that the tabloids, the gossip rags, Hedda Hopper. If you don't know who Hedda Hopper is, look up the old rags. It's basically these people who would write, and they were fucking sharks. They were sharks. They would go out there and they would find whatever blood that they could, and they would pounce on it. And so this relationship between these two women would build itself as such, where in the news they were talking about how much they hated each other. And I think in this film, Bette Davis was nominated for an Academy Award, her 10th, her last nomination. And she really thought she was going to win it. Go on YouTube and look up Bette Davis talking about this movie. She was like, I was going to win it. I should have won it. And she basically says Joan Crawford went out of her way to make sure that didn't happen, because Joan Crawford, the story is, went to the voters and she talked to as many people as she can to not vote for Bette Davis. But she also spoke to the other nominees and said, if you can't pick up your Oscar, if you win and you can't pick up the Oscar, I will pick it up for you. So at the Academy Awards, apparently they were backstage. The winner for Best Actress is announced, and Bette Davis is ready. She's ready to go out to that podium and accept and thank God and family and her agents and everybody else that. And they say Anne Bancroft for The Miracle Worker, and Bette Davis is just like sullen, so disappointed. And to make matters worse, Joan Crawford walks past her and bumps into her and says, "Excuse me, I have an Oscar to accept." Now, all of that is on screen. It's all on screen. It's all on the 2 hours and 13 minutes that you're watching this film, because you feel like, I don't care what they say, is that Bette Davis will say there was a respect. I had a respect for her because she was professional. But she would say that she did not like her. Joan Crawford, on the other hand, would pretend that she liked Bette Davis. Joan Crawford would play the part where she didn't understand why there was any animosity toward each other. Bette Davis didn't give a fuck. Bette Davis was the honey badger. She didn't give a fuck. She'd put it out there. So every bit of bile and mistrust, paranoia, anger, and disgust with one another is on that on that screen. And I think sometimes I wonder how good a film is versus certain aspects of the film being so brilliant and real and honest that it elevates it. I think part of the problem with what we do is recognizing what a fun film is versus what a good film is versus what a great film is versus something that maybe you're giving it more credit than it deserves. Does all of that make sense that I'm saying? Like, do you follow
What
that?
do you mean by the problem with it?
The problem with it is that okay, you watch a movie in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases you watch a movie for the entertainment value. But there's also the artistic value of the film. So,
Of course.
What's that?
I said, of course.
Of course, yeah. So the problem, I think, is when you overwhelmed by certain aspects of the film that are great. In this case, the performances of both Bette Davis and Joan Crawford versus the overall quality of the film. Is the film not as good as the performances in it? Is the narrative not handled as well as it could have been? Is Aldrich's direction or the supporting cast problematic? All of these. The question becomes, am I reading, as well as a great many fans of this film, are we reading too much into the relationship of Joan Crawford and Bette Davis versus the narrative of Jane Hudson and Blanche Hudson? There's a sense of an artistic achievement and entertainment achievement, or entertainment value versus artistic achievement. But I think I'm not being clear enough. What I'm saying is, I guess the problem that I'm trying to say is that is the narrative being handled in a way that is does it stand alone? Does it work on its own, or would it not work if we weren't carrying in the baggage of what we're seeing, the baggage of our understanding of the relationship between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford outside of these two characters? You know what it really comes down to, does it fucking matter? Because for me, it's just like these questions, what it is really the question that comes down to the artist's ability as a director or a writer to create this world where these two sisters exist with each other, and the drama is organic and real. Or is it fabricated? And I mean, everything is fabricated to a degree. I don't know. I'm picking at threads that don't make any sense, and I don't think I can. At least at this moment, I don't think I can explain myself in a way that really does this idea either justice or can articulate it.
Well, I think you're getting at something. I think it's I think you're looking at the relationship between what we bring to a film versus what the film gives to us. I think it's like Hemingway's Iceberg.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you started to mention this, so yeah, please break that down.
Yeah, so he said, or it's attributed to him that when you're creating your story or your whatever your piece is, because you can apply it across the board. It's like an iceberg. There's the part of the iceberg that's above the water. That's what you see. That's what people see.
Yeah.
But there's a larger, so much larger part below the surface. And that part you don't show the reader or the audience. But those things inform the reader or the audience. And the lower part, the submerged part of the iceberg supports the tip, which is what we see. And it's like that. So we don't need to know that Bette Davis and Joan Crawford were legends in their own time, in the previous times. We don't need to know that they were that in real life. We don't need to know that they had this rivalry. It's enough that we know that this world that's being created on the screen is there. And we get it. But knowing makes it that much more spicy, makes it that much more flavorful and salty. To be able to be like, fuck, like this is acting, but it's also not acting. This is real, but it's also more real. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that was the point that I was trying to get to, where is that this idea of real life informing a performance, or in some cases, I go back to what I called a cheat, and I don't know if I explained that correctly, but it's like sometimes, whether it be either lazy filmmaking or lazy audience interpretation of foisting all of that off-screen anger and resentment and hatred onto this. I mean, I'll say it right here, right now. It's like, I loved every second of it. I thought it was palpable, and I thought the characters that they created were realistic, and it was a relationship that would exist between two sisters, especially, and then you take into account both of them entertainment industry sisters in that world where women are used up and spit. I mean, I'll go so far as to say that everybody in the entertainment industry is used up and spit out when they are no longer a commodity to the industry. But it seems to be a stronger fall for women, and that's amplified in this film. I think Aldrich and his screenwriter use every aspect of their understanding and experience in the industry to bring out that that emotional turmoil, that back and forth, that push and pull that exists between these two women. And I was trying to think of anything that was comparable to this. Really, I could only think of two other relationships on film where people were like, "Oh my God, these two are coming together." And the first one was Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin in Limelight, which they shared two scenes together, and they're both scenes set on the vaudeville stage, and both of them are brilliant in that moment. Actually, it's the best part of that movie. It's It's a very overrated movie with it's a little bit too ham-handed and emotionally obvious. But the other one would be Robert De Niro and Al Pacino coming together for Heat.
Yeah.
And it's you can remember 1996 when that film 95 or 96 when that film came out. I don't You could not have possibly been as excited as I was about it, only because of my ridiculous fascination with Robert De Niro at that point in my life. But I think you understand, and I think you know how powerful, and I think you could probably remember what a big deal it was on Entertainment Tonight and MTV News and The Big Picture and whatever those shows that followed movies.
Yeah.
The coming together of Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in that one scene too. It's one scene.
Well, there's that scene and there's the scene in the at the airport.
Yeah, the final
Yeah.
But that's just them killing each other. That's not that's not that back and forth that sometimes you wonder, it's like, am I just so excited at seeing something that I've wanted to happen for so long, or is this as good as it is? I think with Heat, it's definitely as good as it was. And I think with this, it is as well.
It shows in Heat because they did that movie a few years later.
Yeah, Righteous Kill.
Righteous Kill. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that. It wasn't what Heat had been.
No.
It was a tremendous letdown.
Yeah, yes, it was.
And so for that to be what it became, and then finally to make up for it with The Irishman, it was finally a sense of redemption. But
I think De Niro even spoke about that, where Pacino said that De Niro told him, we can't let Righteous Kill be the swan song. We can't let that be the thing that ended it. And you and I were there for The Irishman. It's pretty fucking great. Regardless of what a lot of people say, it is pretty fucking great.
I mean, and the as a side, since we're on this like side street, mm-hmm. the idea was that at that restaurant scene between De Niro and Pacino, are they actually both there together shooting, or did they have a rivalry or what? Because I've heard that they weren't there together.
Yeah, I've heard that story too.
I don't know. I mean, these two, Davis and Crawford, are there throughout the whole fucking thing. And there's a quote, and here's the thing, I don't even remember at the moment who said it. It was like an older Hollywood star, female, and she says, "Men get older, women get old."
Yeah.
And even that, it's like, well, had it been a male like actor, would I have remembered his name? You know what I mean? Like, there's that part of it too. Babylon, the film, shows Brad Pitt as one of those aging, silent movie actors struggling with the transition into sound, and it doesn't go well for him.
Yeah,
and it deals with that idea of like Hollywood and the sacrificial altar of Hollywood, and this touches on that. This touches on, I mean, the psychological aspect of there's horror adjacent. There's Hitchcock touches on some of the themes here, or some of the performances, or some of the vibes, or however you want to describe it. And because Hitchcock does it, that means De Palma does it.
Yeah.
Um, which is also means Lynch does it. Lynch does it in Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire. You can see potentially like the character in Mulholland Drive, had she survived and had she made it, or you can see her becoming the character, Laura Dern's character in Inland Empire, and that had she, she gone on, you can potentially see her becoming either a Joan Crawford or a Bette Davis, or um, you wonder, Marilyn Monroe, had she lived,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes kind of like it's an after porn ends, um, but they keep coming back. Um, and it's like you end up swapping out one fetish for another. You know what I mean? The idea, at some point we've talked about this, where I think we talked about it maybe in The Substance, which is the most recent film that I can think of that deals with this. Which is that, like, in porn, I don't know how it is now, because I don't know I don't know how they look at the demographic or whatever. But I remember, I don't know if it was John Ronson. Yeah, he did like some kind of podcast series, and one of the things that they brought out was that, so this is a few years ago. They talked about if you appeal to the barely legal fetish, you have you have an avenue. If you appeal to the MILF fetish, you have an avenue. But if you're in between, so I mean, I think the way they described it at that point, it was like, if you're like late 20s or something like that, as they describe it, you're kind of fucked, because you it's not like, you're not specific enough. And so it's interesting. It's in all of these different worlds of performance. It's like, how does it work? And it takes me back to like the horror aspect, where it's like, if you think of the female archetypes, like in from like a pagan perspective, or symbolically like that, like, you have the maiden, you have the mother, and you have the crone. Um, and from a like a witchcraft perspective, those things they all have their value, and there's a time for each of those. But in horror, you can see how women are punished in all of these different ways, or depicted as somehow monstrous, because even the maiden, um, there's something monstrous about the girl. If it's something like the witch is going to get blamed. The witch is typically, these are women who are menstrual or premenstrual, and then once they go into puberty, they now there's something unclean, there's something scary, there's something. Look at Carrie, so
Yeah.
innocent, and then and all of this is on the why am I bringing this up? Because it's on the trajectory in the stories that we see and we tell. This is on the trajectory of becoming Bette Davis. Um, the In The Witch, it's like, you see the different aspects. You see you see the young girl, you see like like the hot chick who tempts the boy, and then you see the old hag, basically. Um, in The Exorcist, you have the girl who's possessed. Midsommar, the girl who's involved in all that. Black Swan, um, the girl who's basically possessed by her dark side. Once you shift into the mother archetype, Hereditary, Rosemary's Baby, The Brood, if you remember that famous shot in The Brood.
Yeah.
You have in Alien, the fucking in what is it, Aliens, where it's the mom, the mother alien versus it's the moms fighting.
The queen. Yeah.
The queen. And she's a monster. And even the mothers in horror films are adding to the fucked up. I mean, Reagan's mom is not necessarily making things better. I mean, she's freaking out, but it's like it's creating this Jesus Christ. Stellan Burstyn's always fucking like having a nervous breakdown. Fucking Carrie's mom is a fucking psycho. Jason's mom is a fucking psycho. The mom from Black Swan is fucking off.
Yeah.
Once you get into the Crone, Requiem for a Dream, Ellen Burstyn. I mean, it's a tragic, but there's also something. There's something monstrous about that in its depiction. The substance, the idea of like, oh, you're fucking like, if you may not see yourself as monstrous, but we will see you as monstrous, and you'll develop that. You know, Sunset Boulevard.
Sunset Boulevard is definitely the one. As I was watching this, I was reminded of Sunset Boulevard in a way that that became very pronounced in this version. She is very Norma Desmond like.
Yeah,
and it's a story of being unable to let go of the past because the past was so powerful and wonderful. And you know, Norma Desmond rewatches her old movies in the same way that Blanche is rewatching her old movies, and Jane sits on the floor reading her her news clippings.
Jane performs.
That was one of the saddest things I've ever seen.
That was scary and beautiful and fucking and magical.
Yeah.
She's performing in front of a doll. She's doing this old vaudevillian number in front of a doll of herself as a child. And she's all dolled up too. But she looks like an asylum doll.
Yeah.
There used to be this there used to be a lady, this is way back in the 80s, Reaganomics and his policies and his trickle down bullshit, they affected after school programs and all this shit. And there were these local, like, kind of centers. They were kind of like halfway house places for people with mental illness that they would live there. And some of them shut down, and so you would see more of them like that were in homelessness at that point. And there used to be this lady, and everyone called her Maria la Loca, Crazy Mary.
Wow.
And she would wear like blush, like to the extreme, and she looked like a weird doll. And you know, she would wander around, and she was one of the local street characters that you would see, and she didn't harm anyone or anything. She was just like wandering around, and it it reminds me of that. It's like it's sad, but it's in the way that it's shown. In that it's my favorite scene in the film.
Yeah.
It looks very. You can see David Lynch in there. Have you ever seen his Alphabet short?
No.
Yeah, that's fucking scary. At some point we'll watch it.
Okay. I think it's on the Eraserhead disc. There was quite a few David Lynch shorts on there that I've kind of dug into when we were talking to Eraserhead.
Yeah, we'll have to get into that at a later point.
Definitely.
But it's like this is not cute. Like as Leslie would say, like the she's looking at her. She's performing for a doll of herself when she was this icon, and you had merchandising off of her. Where kids wanted that fucking doll. It was like a life-size type doll. And as I was a child, and now there's this old lady, and she's like off her fucking rocker, and what's interesting is that it's the actors are not as old as the characters.
Yeah.
But they're it's kind of like what, because we don't hear. I mean, it's not that we don't hear or we hear. It's that, think about the positive side of this though. Flip it, and think about the Golden Girls, and how it humanized. It really did the opposite way. And think about how iconic Betty White became, and like a pop cultural kind of thing, and that the Golden Girls and that they were not as old as they seemed, and then it's also like nowadays, because of the way it's the overall vibe is different, but also like it's the fillers and all this other shit. Like people in like Wilford Brimley, I've seen something like that where Wilford Brimley and fucking
I think it was Cocoon.
in the firm. Is it in Cocoon? It's just him in the 80s, just in general. He's like in his 40s or some shit like that.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how old he is compared to how old he is. What he's being asked to portray versus what he is.
Or even how they seemed.
Yeah.
How people seemed at that time. Or think about, I mean, Angela Lansbury was doing her shit. You know what I mean? Like Jessica Tandy came back for Driving Miss Daisy. Judi Dench was working until the very end.
Well, Judi Dench is dead?
Isn't she?
I don't think so.
Did I kill Judi Dench?
I don't know. You might have. I didn't know Judi Dench is. No, Judi Dench is still alive. You must be thinking of somebody else.
Oh, I fucking killed her.
She's 90, but
no, Maggie Smith is dead.
Maggie Smith died last year, I think, 2 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and she was like, "Damn, I'm already putting Judi Dench to the grave." Yeah. Fuck. I mean, I'm proving my own point. Maggie Smith, Judi Dench, I guess she can't work because she's blind now, right? Or am I wrong?
I think it's one of those things that she's blind, I think, yeah.
Okay. So I apologize, Dame Judy. Maggie Smith in Downton Abbey. I mean, she was like, and I took my mom to see the Leslie and I took her for her birthday to see the whatever part 3 or whatever it is that came out. And there's a moment where they acknowledge in the film, the characters acknowledge that character, and therefore they're acknowledging the actor. And it was powerful because it was just kind of like, like Maggie Smith was a bad bitch, you know, like look at Helen Mirren.
Yeah.
And so there is a flip side of it that does show, as it should be, the power and that sense of like you mentioned this, you get to, as you get older, you don't give a fuck. Um, and to see these characters, I mean, Helen Mirren still has this like sexy vibe.
Yeah.
Um, Lover or hater, what's her name? Martha Stewart.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that, you know. But it's the sense of not trying to be something that they're not. You know, you bring up all these women who have aged and I think have done so gracefully. Maybe some of them have had work done, but they're obviously older women versus something like you know what was coming up in my feed just a bunch was Kris Jenner and her, I don't know, 70th birthday party or something, and they were talking about how great she looks. She's just had a facelift, and they're just talking about rolling back the hands of the hands of time and beating father time and age, and it's like it's kind of sad to me because it's like you're just trying. There's something beautiful about aging into the person that you need to be. Age takes over, and you're a grandmother at this point. You don't have to be that young, sexy thing. And no matter how good you look or how good the work is, you're not going to be your daughters, who they themselves are no longer the it girls that they once were. There's a sense of sadness when it comes to women because it's you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you get old, my God, look how old you got. Versus look at you trying to hold on to the past. And you know, I'm a hypocrite because um, Jillian Barbier came up in my feed the other day.
Oh yeah.
Now you remember her? For those who don't know, she was a staple in Los
Yep.
Angeles morning news. She was the weather girl, but she was also like an idiot that would chime in stupid shit because morning news became jokes. But she's gone through some serious health problems, and to see her now, it's almost like you're like, wow, that's fucking sad to see how she looks now. When the truth is, you should be like, hey, she beat whatever the fuck it is
Yeah.
that
Right.
that health wise. So when you look
Yeah.
at a Bette Davis and a Joan Crawford in this, there is something to be said about um, them being willing to embrace the fact that they were no longer um, the young women, the young beautiful women that had started those careers. Other women had come along and had displaced them. At 63, Raquel Welch was running around in a fucking fur skin bikini, um, you know, fighting pterodactyls and shit. It was a
Right.
different time. They weren't going to be able to compete with that. But the fact is that they give a performance as they gotten older that is filled with the power of aging and what it means to age in Hollywood as a woman. And I think that's the thing that I think that's why this film is as powerful as it is. We've talked our midnight movies, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Eraserhead, and what was the other one we did? We've done one more film.
Things blending, whatever happened. We did.
Um,
Oh, we did the Faster Pussycat Kill Kill.
Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. Three of those films are iconic in the gay community. Now that's a subculture that you and I are both adjacent to, working for as long as we did in theater, and me comedy and extra work in Hollywood. But it's something that I don't understand. And I wonder, the easy answer is strong women. But I don't understand why that is something that would draw the gay community to that. But all three of those films, Tula Santara in Faster Pussycat, the Rocky Horror Picture Show with Tim Curry. Tim Curry is obvious in that film. But Faster Pussycat and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, these are films that are like, they're staples. Is it because of the violence and the bravado and the take no shit attitude and the standing up for something that makes it more powerful?
I think a lot of it is an over the top aspect that can be looked at through the lens of like humor, even though you see the tragedy and the drama behind it. You know what I mean? I think the campiness is part of it, a huge part of it. I think questions of authenticity in the face of like a society that is oppressive, I think that's a huge part of it too. I don't see why it wouldn't be that. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean those things, less so the camp, but more so the authenticity. I mean, those things appeal to me, you know.
Sure.
And so now if you have a set of, I'm not even going to say one group, a set of groups that are historically that are told, you, if that's what you are, you're not. No, you're not.
Yeah, you can't be that. Yeah,
you cannot be that. And if you are, you better hide it. I mean, and I think obviously there's a parallel to a society that says like, what do you mean strong woman? That's an oxymoron, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
no, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
This is the world that we're in, where if a woman asks a question to the powers that be, that they lean and go, quiet, piggy.
Yeah.
And you're going like, we're all, I'm gonna not say anything. I'm not gonna censor myself. I'm gonna behave myself, for the purposes of self-preservation. I'll say it in my prayers at night. It's one of those things where, and we keep coming into this, where it's like through exploitation, you arrive at a critique of the same of the exploitation. You arrive at the critique of the society that creates those conditions. And then it's like, well, how much of it is participating in it versus critiquing it? Black exploitation does that with issues that affect the Black community, or affected, I mean, they continue to, but at that time, things that even were more prominent back then, that were more relevant to those times, told through that lens of the 70s or whatever. Horror, Grindhouse, and the the morality around the kind of that moral stance of like, okay, this girl, you're gonna wear those short shorts, you die. You're gonna show your tits, you die. You're about to have sex, you die. Um, so it like feeds that machine that creates the desire to see that supposedly justice inflicted on that person. But at the same time, it comments on it and critiques it. Um, it's the same thing that, you know, why does the black guy die first? Um, all of that. All forms of exploitation cinema, like you see them doing this. We've talked about the revenge film. The woman gets her revenge. Yeah, we're down to see it, but it's like, but first we have to see her get brutally raped and brought so low. Um, so it's fascinating to see that kind of that if it is a paradox, to see that paradox at work, and here it's to see a scenario where women who are of their own icon status, but are being they're aging out of their relevance. You see them giving these great performances that show that they still can be relevant.
Yeah.
And they're playing, you know, so-called crazy or whatever, to show that it's like, well, we're not all crazy. It's fascinating. It is this to me. This is the B-side of Sunset Boulevard, and
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah, it is.
the last time I saw it before this was I went to Hollywood Forever. They had it showing at the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
So that just added to the ambiance of, you know, of old Hollywood, and we're here with we're there around all these dead celebrities, watching a film about undead walking haunted house starlets, you know. um it's creepy, it's beautiful. um if you haven't seen it, it's if you like the substance, it's like, well, this is the substance, is the body horror. This is like 1 degree, like after, like beyond um the Cassavetes film,
Wow. Yeah. Woman Under the Influence.
Woman Under the Influence.
Yeah.
You know, another one. You know what I mean? Another one of those performances where it's just kind of like, man, the places that they went to, and the things that you see in this movie are just kind of like, and for their time, you're just going like, wow, like the shit that she does to that they do to each other, but particularly Betty Davis, um, Baby Jane. I haven't read the book, but it's yeah.
No. By the end of the film, when everything has started to fall apart for Jane, and um, she runs off the guy that she thinks is going to her accompanist for her big stage return, and she ends up killing a maid who's looking after Blanche, and everything starts to fall, and she starts descending quickly into madness, and they end up on that beach,
Yeah.
and the reveal comes. It changes something about the movie, not in a bad way. it doesn't change it where you do come to a point where you're like, oh my God. It changes perception. Because
Hmm.
up until that point, I thought of Blanche as the good sister who was doing everything that she could who was doing her duty towards family to take care of her sister as she started to, slowly lose her mind. And you find out that it wasn't Jane that crippled Blanche, but Blanche had tried to kill Jane and crippled herself, but would allow her sister to spend the next, what, 2 decades or a decade believing that she was the cause of it. It's this weird moment where you think, holy fuck, this movie has been lies.
The
They've
whole
lied
time.
to themselves the whole time. There's no truth to this movie except for the truth of what it says about humanity in that world, and the people that seek that kind of fame to some degree. I was really thrown by it. I was like, you son of a bitch, really? You fucked with me. You led me to believe one thing, and then you pulled the carpet out from under me. It's rare that
Yeah.
a movie can pull off a number like that, as realistically as this one does.
Yeah, because otherwise it becomes, and I mean, I'm pulling out an old name too, but it becomes, I mean, obviously not as old, but
Mm-hmm.
it becomes like an M. Night Shyamalan thing where it's like, okay, twist at the end
Yeah.
coming, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's like the twist would be to not have a twist at that point.
Well, you go back and you watch the movie differently because now you know Blanche is doing what she's doing not out of love, but out of guilt.
Yeah.
Not
But she
simply,
still,
but
she still remembers, because there's a moment where they're kids and Jane has gotten the ice cream. She's asking for it, and the dad is like, no, you can't have it, and blah blah, and then eventually he's gonna give it to her. So then he's like, okay, well, you want ice cream too, right, Blanche? And she's like, I don't want ice cream. And he's like, what do you think you're doing? Like basically play along.
yeah.
And then the mom goes up to her and she's like, one day, please, like, have the grace for them that they're not able to have for you right now. And then and the little girl is like, she's like, I'll remember.
Did she say that? I'll remember or I'll never forget her.
Yes, something like that.
And it's great.
I'll never
Great
forget
moment.
it. Yeah. She's basically saying, like, you can bet your fucking ass I'm never gonna forget this shit, you know, and you're like, okay, villain origin story right there.
Mm-hmm.
And when that reveal happens, you go back to that moment.
Yeah, you definitely do.
And then there's also a part where it's like kind of like, I don't. There's part of me that's kind of like, well, of course you fucking try to kill her, her her sister Jane has been her tormentor since the beginning, and it's just this fucked up irony that she ended up hurting herself more by trying to stop her sister. Um, it's just fucked. Um, and that sense of powerlessness. You know, they live together in this house, and Blanche controls the money, but because Blanche is disabled, Jane is both her caretaker and her tormentor, and she's basically her hostage. Blanche is Jane's hostage.
Well, there's that line that most people who love this movie quote that line. You wouldn't be able to do this to me if I weren't in this chair. And Betty just turns around. But you are in this chair. You are in this chair. But you're in this chair, Blanche. You are in this chair. You're like, what a bitch. I
Yeah,
love it.
I mean,
I
she's like,
love it. It's so fucking
she
so
tells her,
fucking brutal.
if something would happen to me, you wouldn't have access to my money.
Yeah.
She's like, have you thought about that? And Jane's like, yeah, I've thought about it. He sure has.
I love it.
She's ordering alcohol to be delivered like ASAP, and then they do that. It's like she lip syncs to the voice.
Yeah.
Um, the dead bird.
The rat.
Um,
Fuck.
yeah.
It's I wonder if they just had such great enjoyment of torturing each other like they did, and these movies play into the roles that each played. Bette Davis always played. One of the better things about this movie is that this makes you want to deep dive back into their careers. And I want to see some of the earlier films that they did. And Bette Davis played the strong-willed, take no shit, young woman who would achieve great things. And Joan Crawford always played the put upon, victimized, good wife, good girlfriend, good mother. None of that was more apparent than in Mildred Pierce, and for Bette Davis, All About Eve.
Yeah.
But these are two women with filmographies that you can go back to and you can watch. And at this point, watching those films, it would be impossible. It would be impossible to watch any of their earlier films without thinking of this film.
I mean, in the same way that I can't watch this film without also thinking about Mommy Dearest.
Yeah, another camp classic, another a type of film that's just the fucking wire hangers. It's just
Well, I mean,
that's a hard movie. That's a yeah.
Yeah, Faye Dunaway.
You know,
Um,
Bette Davis also
the
had a
wire
daughter
hangers are
who wrote a book about her. You know that?
really no,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. She cut off all relationships with her daughter because of the book that she wrote. Bette Davis was a tough bitch. Bette Davis was rough and tough and didn't give a fuck. Google her, YouTube her, and see some of those old interviews where she would just come out there smoking and not giving a shit. And there was something.
Tell the story.
Yeah, okay. So I think Bette Davis lived into the mid 80s. She died at 82. And Joan Crawford died in, I think, 77, 76, somewhere around there. And a reporter, the reporter couldn't wait to get this interview. She goes to Bette Davis and she says, Joan Crawford has died. Do you have anything to say? And Bette Davis is just sitting there and she says, my mother always told me, don't say anything unless you have something good to say about somebody. Joan Crawford is dead. Good. That's a fucking. That's everything to me. Joan Crawford is dead. Good.
That's the good she had to say.
That's the good. Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's fucking crazy.
Ain't it?
Especially back then, that vibe,
Yeah.
The cigarette.
Yeah.
The old school.
That's who she was. And you just embrace it. You love it. If you love movies, you love these two women because they brought so much to that screen and they didn't give a shit. And I was overwhelmed by it. I fell in love with both of them during this movie. I thought this is fucking great.
Wait till midnight. Put the film on. buymeacoffee.com/watchRickRamos. It's buymeacoffee.com/watchRickRamos. We'd like to thank our members, Lamberg, Palmer, Slim, Burrows, those who donate anonymously. We have the archive. We have this. If you like what we do, buy us a coffee, keep us caffeinated, keep us hydrated with that liquid. Until next time, if you don't have anything good to say, run over your sister. Goodbye.